All right. Turn my volume down on this damn thing.
Right.
I think I'm right up.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. All right. Finally going. Finally going. Anyway.
All right. I'm gonna go and share this on Facebook.
I'll just sit here and wait patiently.
Why?
What am I going to do?
Hell's up your ass.
Why didn't you play with yourself? Okay.
No, I was gonna go on and share it.
You shared on Facebook? I don't think you did that. You share on Facebook too?
I'm sharing it from our Facebook page and just saying it's happening now. That's all. 'Cause there's 7 people on here listening to this. Hey, good afternoon, Frank. Happy 160th of Chickamauga. Yes, it is the 160th of Chickamauga. Evening ski.
I thought yesterday was a 160 the Chickamauga.
We're on day 2, the 160th.
Yeah, okay. So theoretically, yes, that's actually day 2. Day 2 is a big day, Mary. Big day in Chickamauga land for you.
Yep.
Today is September 19th, of course. This is when things were really when stuff was getting down.
Yeah. Well, stuff was getting down the day before, but I mean, September 19th is when Bragg has to wake up and basically change his whole battle plan because of what Minty and Wilder have done the day before.
They do. But this is when all the action was going. A lot of the
who
action.
was held in reserve until the evening was Pat Claiborne.
He was. Pat Claiborne was held in reserve. He was. He had a good battle. I mean, you know who his brigade commander was. One of them was the great Sterling A.M. Wood.
Oh, like was he with Claiborne at that?
Then he rose to the occasion. His Alabamans and Mississippians. Lucius Polk, James Deschler, and of course the great Thomas Hotchkiss. Mary, yes. Learn your Chickamauga. I don't know. You
know what I feel bad for is Lucius Polk is the bishop's nephew, and the bishop is a shit show. He's a shit show at Chickamauga. He's basically a shit show wherever he goes.
Yeah, that's true.
But his nephew Lucius is actually pretty talented.
Yeah,
Lucius Polk was like he sucked, and it's like everybody's assuming you're Leonidas, and it's like no. We mean the bishop's nephew.
I know. Well, I don't know if these guys any really sucked. I mean, what's well, I guess I get right into it, huh? Flying right, hitting the ground running today because you were late signing on.
Oh, good morning. Oh, good morning. Rob Delby's on here.
Okay.
Samia, David Maxwell, Michael Boyd.
Hey, all right. Well, I'm not sure if it's morning, but okay. You do you.
Sorry. Good evening.
Good evening, Mary. How are you?
It's almost time for, as David says, almost time for Cocktails and Cannonballs, which is happening Friday at the National Civil War Museum in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. If you go onto their website right now, the live auction has started.
I hadn't heard about this event, Mary. Not going to lie to you. No, that's going to be a good time. That'll be fun because a lot of people are going to this. I think it's great to see some old friends. I'll get to meet some new ones, of course. And it's not too late to sign up. You can go. You can sign up and go to Harrisburg. You're all the cool kids. Mary notwithstanding, you can see a lot of good history. You can see a good live artillery demonstration at nighttime. Mary, we've been talking about this. You can have, you can win some cool auctions, like you said, something, a Tilly Pierce thing. There's a blanket or something that they're making, a quilt, and not all kinds of stuff. Union Cigar.
We shared it on our Facebook page, what they shared, so you can go on there. Good evening, Lisa. But yeah, as we were saying, so Cocktails and Cannonballs is happening Friday evening. It's not too late to get tickets. We just released episode 115, I think it was. 114.
Somewhere along the way, we missed the number, I think.
No,
but whatever.
I went and checked. We didn't miss a number.
Sure, Jan.
Oh, God.
Okay, fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great time. The weather looks pretty good. A little cloudy, not going to be hot AF like it usually is. So I think it'll be a good time. But it's supporting a good cause, though. I mean, if anybody who has not been to this museum and you've been at Gettysburg, shame on you because you're really missing out. If you have been, I am preaching to the converted, as they say. So I think it's going to be a good time. I think a lot of people will come out. We're going to be doing some trivia. Apparently we're emceeing this, which is news to us, which is very exciting. So we'll see how that goes. You better watch your mouth.
I've never emceed.
Children on there.
Never emceed anything before. David
I've emceed stuff. I've been, I'm gonna wear my velvet jacket. Are you kidding me?
You can't, you're wearing your colonel uniform.
You're such a buzzkill all the time, but it'll be good. But a lot of people are coming up with this, and I think it's really, really cool. And Mary Beth and all the people at the museum are very appreciative of everybody coming out. And when I talked to her the other day, and she said a lot of people from the podcast has signed up, and she was very happy to see that. This is like their big fundraiser, and this is if you want these museums to stick around. The one down in Richmond, the one in Connecticut, the one that Doug Oak, the one that Doug Oaks is trying to put together in Elmira, all those ones. This is what you got to do, because you've said this before. I'll say it again. They ain't going to be around forever. We might be, but they won't be.
No, the museums will probably.
No, they'll be around. They'll get long and outlive us. Trust me. I probably got about 2 days left.
Oh God. So David said the bishop definitely sucked. Don't say cannonball too loud around Polk.
That is true. Your boy Howard sent him one. And
Didn't Sherman order Howard's guys to fire?
That's Christian general on Bishop crime is what that was. That was like the Holy Wars. That was like, BC Notre Dame stuff right there. Yeah. There you go. But that'll be good. And I know some people are coming up for that. So I'm definitely looking forward.
Yeah, we thank you everybody who's coming up for it. That's really awesome.
No, so that's good. That's cool. We'll be up there on Friday. There'll be some shenanigans afoot back in Gettysburg afterwards. I'm sure there will be. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So everything else going okay? You survived your trip to Florida. That was cool.
I did. Yes, did. We didn't see any Civil War stuff this time, but next time we're going to look into there was a battle in Tampa, I think in 1862 or something, and it was like.
We did fly in a hurricane, which is a new one. That's a new one.
That was quite the thing. Good evening, MJ. MJ is going to be joining us at Cocktails and Cannonballs as well as her persona, Major Pauline Cushman, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a fun night. So
it'll be anyway, back. Okay. Sorry.
All right. No, whatever.
No, go ahead.
What were you gonna say? Nope. No,
what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I think it'll be fun. It'll be laid back. It's not gonna be very snooty or any of that stuff. It's gonna be a lot of people. There'll be alcohol flowing, cigars smoked, laughs to be had. And hopefully there's some cool people there. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a good time. I think it'll be a good time. We'll see what happens. Rumor had, I don't know if you heard this, Mary, but there's a rumor around that AQ's going. Did you hear this? Did you hear this one?
Yeah, she said definitely looking forward to Friday night. So that's pretty cool.
Saw that. I knew she was going anyway, but apparently she's getting dressed in period clothes. Maybe she is. Maybe Duct Tape Man will be coming. But again, maybe not. Anyway, but that's anyway. Thanks for everybody who's going to come to us. I know a lot of people have messaged us saying they're going to go. So that being said,
we really appreciate it, and then more than that, the museum appreciates the support because it's a fundraiser for them. It's a great way to get out and see some history and have some fun.
And just for our role real quick, we are going to be doing trivia again, and we're going to be giving out books courtesy of the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop in Chicago, Illinois, and we got a lot of good stuff to give away. There's even going to be some prizes given away by the museum as well. All the questions have been written and they are ready to go. They've been submitted. So I don't want to hear any crap from you, Mary, if you challenging on one of these questions. What we say is
I've never challenged.
All right. No, I think it's gonna be good. I think a lot of there'll be some easy questions, there'll be some medium questions, and there'll be some licensed battlefield guide quality questions as well. If you've done our trivia, if you come on to us, those are pretty much what the questions are going to be. The same type of speed. So some cool people are going to be there. I think our old friend Pete Mealy is coming from the museum, from seminary. Yeah. He'll be there. And so we'll see if he gets involved.
MJAQ, David Maxwell's going to be there as well.
Ski's going to be the great John Gentili will make an appearance. Apparently it's not a height requirement, so he can make it. That's a good thing. And so that'd be fun. No, I think it's going to be a good time. It's fun to see everybody. It's always fun to see all the Civil War nerds, and probably end up at the mine at some point. We'll see what happens.
Probably. Yeah. But at this time, 160 years ago, Pat Claiborne has just finished making his night attack at Chickamauga, which was one of the few night attacks in the Civil War And Claiborne, along with who are his brigade commanders? It's Sterling A.M. Wood,
Sterling A.M. Wood, Lucius Polk,
Polk.
and James Deschler.
Yeah.
We just talked about this, Mary. Now, mostly Alabamans, Mississippians, and these are the guys who he's going to go to war with in this battle. And there's a lot of good people who fight with this. The thing about Chickamauga is, and you've said this before, and this is you've always been a big Chickamauga person here. This is a monstrous battle. I mean, the Confederates, depending on who you see and what you read, had about 65,000 at this, and the Union had about 60. I mean, by the time they got to this, and going into it, if you remember, the Union had a substantial numerical advantage until Bragg got his he went to the bullpen and called in his guys.
That Longstreet, which nobody believed that Longstreet was coming in. Like, who is it? Poor Minty is going to Crittenden and saying, dude, like, Longstreet is coming in, and Crittenden's like, no, Longstreet's back in Virginia. And it's got a lot of parallels with what happens in the first day of Shiloh with Sherman telling Appler, nope, they're not there. They're not at all. Like, he was relying on, so Crittenden is relying on reports coming from Washington. Now, I'm sorry, but how the hell is Washington going to know where the hell James Longstreet is? You've got one guy saying like, no, he's here. I have proof. And Crittenden's like, no, he's not. You're like, what does he think Minty's on? Like, Minty didn't fucking drink.
Well,
so
he didn't drink. He was an Irishman, and he did not drink. He did not smoke. He was kind of like, he would have done well in that town that Footloose was in. Yeah, he probably didn't dance Footloose either.
I've never
seen it. You didn't see Footloose?
Never seen it. No.
I saw Footloose. You haven't had the pleasure of seeing Footloose. I think Kevin Bacon was in that. I don't remember exactly. I don't know how I'm thinking of this from what drugs I've been on to think of that movie. But there's the thing about it is, you look at some of the guys who fought in this. I mean, there was a lot of questions about this because there's always bad intel. I mean, you look at some of the stuff happened with McClellan being told how many troops the Confederates had just below the border. You're going on hearsay. And they did go to Ringgold, and his scouts did come back and say, hey, the guy with the bad beard from the movies here. I don't know if you know this. He's here. And he came back, and Crittenden went, no. And I wonder if a lot of it was like making himself convinced that he was like, Crittenden cannot be here because, Longstreet, because that would suck. So I'm going to say this enough, and I'm going to pretend he didn't come. And hopefully he's not like Beetlejuice. You say him 3 times and he appears. And that's probably what happened, actually. Think about it.
So I just real quick, I changed my background. This is the painting by Mort Kunstler of the night fight at Chickamauga.
Okay.
With so Claiborne, and I've always thought it was cool because the only thing illuminating him is the gunshots that are being fired. But that shows how rough the fighting was that night.
Yeah.
At Chickamauga. And it was like he got what, like 2 cannon? Bragg's like, go get those cannon back that we lost. And Claiborne's like, okay.
Well, yeah, up to this point, Claiborne, he was not no bueno at this point.
No.
McLemore's Cove, he did not do well whatsoever. And then, with Thomas Hinman, he as much as we like to wax poetic about Patrick Claiborne, he did struggle at this point, and he had a pretty good battle at Chickamauga overall, but he definitely was starting slow. But I think the mindset of this whole thing was Rosecrans was riding high, and he assumed after Tullahoma, getting pushed back out of Tullahoma on July 3rd, 1863. That's the date of it, July 3rd, 1863. Same date as, and he gets basically pushed out of Chattanooga without a shot, and he's thinking he's demoralized. There's no way. So when he's told that Longstreet's here, and some of these other people have shown up, there's no way in the world this could be true, because he would not have the balls to attack, because he doesn't have the guts to do it. He doesn't have the men.
No.
And so when you're talking to the people like the James Crittendens of the world, the only one who believed it was George Thomas, who would have believed aliens were there. He probably would have fallen for that too, because
Thomas was probably like, well, it's probable, and maybe we shouldn't believe in what.
Well, George Thomas was cautious because, he was cautious, but 2 is his army was spread over 44 miles. Kind of, if you think about how the Battle of Gettysburg started with the Union being spread over 55 miles east, west, and north of the town, it was kind of the same thing here, except they were all kind of all over the place. And Bragg wanted to hit them before they got together, before they strengthened up. And that's what the whole September 18th thing was about, and why Minty and Wilder did what they did and how important their thing was. And then eventually they did get pushed back. But if it wasn't for those two guys and the dismounted cavalry and in those Spencers for Wilder, they would have got across those bridges pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it would have been really
and they would have hit them, they would have destroyed them in detail. And then how do we look at Bragg today? If he destroys the Army of the Cumberland and destroys that whole thing, bags all of them, it's funny how history would change.
Yeah, like it was just by, it was, they needed just 8 hours, it was 10 hours that Minty's guys were fighting. They needed that time to just slow them down in order for Bragg to get back. So the more they could slow them down, and they knew that, Minty and Wilder knew going into September 18th, there was men writing the night before, in the journals or writing letters home saying, we're going to be attacked. We don't know when. And they've been saying that for a few days. Minty and Wilder's guys, Minty's guys especially, have been out near where the Confederates are, and they can hear them. And they know something's up. They know what's up more than Rosecrans does, unfortunately, and certainly more than Crittenden. Thomas is really the only one that is like, what's going on here?
Well, you're studying up for these battles, and you see the patterns and how they repeat themselves. And this whole thing goes down. If you think about when we talked about the Battle of Spotsylvania, right? Mm-hmm. When Hancock's guys and Barlow, they were in the woods and they're all going, shh, don't tell. And they could hear them, stop tickling me, all that, making noise in the woods. The Red Rebels go to Lee and say, there's like a whole bunch of Union guys right here. And Lee's like, no, they're retreating. And that's a big thing is how miscommunication leads to this stuff and how the mistakes happen over and over and over again. Certainly this one was different because I think you're talking more psychology, where Rosecrans and especially Crittenden had absolutely zero belief whatsoever that Bragg could touch his nose, to his finger, because he was so incompetent and that he was so demoralized. Why would he go back and put his hand in the fire again if he got his butt kicked at Stones River? Escaped Tullahoma almost without a shot, ran out of Chattanooga, which was a huge vital railroad and supply hub that Jefferson Davis had to have and Lincoln said he had to have and all that stuff. And now you're getting reports that he's going to come attack you. I mean, come on, seriously.
Yeah. It's Elsie's got a good comment here. So the 77th Pennsylvania got wrecked by Claiborne that night. Thomas Rose of the 77th was captured that night and ended up in Libby Prison and coordinated the famous escape. And AQ mentions that James Garfield survived Chickamauga, but died today, 1881, on the anniversary after his assassin shot him on July 2nd.
He must have been old. He just died today.
Just like anniversary. And then Michael Boyd said, Lightning Brigade forever.
Well, you know what, though? James Garfield, I mean, people look back at him now, and you say this all the time, what a great president he would have been and all this other stuff. He had a great reputation in the Army at this point. He had the reputation of being an absolute Lincoln suck-up, where Rosecrans and some of his guys, I mean, he was the chief of staff, and he was always defending Lincoln, and there was a lot of stuff going back and forth. And so it's funny. And then he has the whole thing that went down later Chickamauga with Thomas J. Wood, right? Yeah. So it's his time has definitely helped him going forward. But at that time, he was somebody who I don't know how much they trusted him.
No, I don't think they did.
Yeah.
What?
Nothing. Just.
No, sorry. Can you say it again? I'm sorry.
Oh, you can read your comments whenever you want. It's totally cool. I can sing some show tunes if you like. I just said that he didn't have a great reputation in the Army at the time because they looked at him as somebody who was always up Lincoln's ass and always supported him with every single time. Yeah. And they didn't. And these generals in the field did not always support Lincoln because he didn't fight and he didn't know. And that was a big part of it. You see how loyal Butterfield was, right, to George Meade. And I'm not sure that was the case with Garfield and with Rosecrans, but
I don't think it was, because Garfield, though, when he started out, he was not a Lincoln person, and it took a while for him to warm up to Lincoln. But then when he finally did, like we were talking about in the episode, he said just how you said it perfectly. He'd become this guy who was like totally kissing Lincoln's ass. And also he was kind of in it for himself. And there is some controversy how, like, who wrote that order on the 20th? Was it Rosecrans? Was it Garfield? Was it somebody else? I don't think it's really known, and it's still debated. I'm of the opinion that it was Garfield that wrote that order to Thomas J. Wood. But people like to blame Rosecrans for it. But I think more Rosecrans was so busy doing so much else. Garfield is on his staff, and he's kind of like, okay, well, I'll take care of this. And he writes it, and look what happens.
Well, a lot of that is the stuff that falls afterwards, the Monday morning quarterback thing, right? Was, obviously Rosecrans had his issues with U.S. Grant, and as time goes on, the U.S. Grant faction is gonna do everything with Rosecrans to hold him back and blame him, and that he doesn't get proper credit for the Cracker Line and the whole thing with Iuka. And there's so much that goes on between those two guys. You always got to take stuff with a grain of salt. But I mean, Garfield was doing his job. Rosecrans, I think, maybe got a little cocky here.
Yep. Oh, he did. He definitely, after Tullahoma, there was a definite arrogance about him. And even one of the guys, I think we had a quote in the episode about it. Even one of the men there said Rosecrans got cocky. He had his guys spread out far too thin. And then when he finally realized it, he had this kind of, like you say, this pucker effect moment where it's like, oh God, I have to get them back. I have to get them back here. And it was, I think, it's kind of like, you see it you see it a bit, like you get a victory and a good one, like he did with Tullahoma. And you're like, wow, what else can I do? Well,
you gotta stay humble.
Is this the enemy? Is Bragg, he ran before, will he run again? And Rosecrans, up until he realized that he was in Schitt's Creek, right? Literally, figuratively, whatever. He had been doing the same stuff that he'd done at Tullahoma. He had been, faking stuff. He had been causing diversions in order to move his army. And Tullahoma had been a campaign of, let's make it seem like we're bigger than we actually are, kind of thing. And, distract them, go by them, and whatever. And he tries to do that in the Chickamauga campaign, and he thinks it's working, and then he realizes, oh shit, it's not, and my guys are spread out way too thin.
Well, both sides, both commanding generals, both use diversion really well heading into this, right? Mentioned Rosecrans using Wilder north of the city to pretend they're building bridges, and they're using Eli Lilly's artillery to fire in the city. And that must have been quite a thing when Bragg left, and when Rosecrans found out that Bragg took off, and he's like, we beat these guys like literally a paper tiger. They took off, left, give up a huge city. And then at that point, we think he got him on the run, and Rosecrans like, let's go chase him down and bag him. And this is when George Thomas comes in and says, we can't. And if you hate Bragg, look at this part of it, because I think this is his best moment. He's able to get his troops together again and formulate a legit offensive plan.
It's a great plan.
And the reality was Cleburne, if he's able to hit them on time with McLemore's Cove and Doug Gap and all that stuff happens, you're able to help stop that. And you have those Confederates coming down from the north. You could have bagged a lot of the Union right there. You had them basically to beat them in detail. And the more time went on, the more his plan was good. If that plan went off on the 17th as it was supposed to, if his offensive, if he didn't call Bushrod Johnson back to Ringgold to go and check in, or whatever the hell he had him doing, come touch base and then turn around and
go back.
He writes that order right around midnight. Johnny Carson just ends it. He's probably getting ready to go to bed. He's going to write down the order. He sends it off.
Yeah.
And then the next morning he says, in the standing orders for Bushrod is to, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, be on your way. He gets 3.5 miles out. He gets the message to turn around, go back to Ringgold.
Yeah.
He has to go all the way back. And then now this battle's not starting until the 18th. And by then, Minty and Wilder have their vedettes spread out. They're strengthening, and slowly but surely, Rosecrans' army is all concentrating near Chattanooga again. And that's what gets you. Most of these battles turn on one little thing. We said before, if Longstreet had one more brigade on July 2nd of the echelon attack, that could be history different right there.
Yeah.
If Run DMG, Dave Montgomery, what's his name, the cavalry guy, Mercury Greg, if he doesn't, I'm thinking Gettysburg now, if he doesn't get to Brinkerhoff Ridge up there and push back and force Allegheny Johnson to send the Stonewall Brigade over and lead, and now you go from 6,600 guys and the Confederates out of 4,500 to go against those 5 brigades left by Pabst Green.
Yeah,
that's what gets you, is these little things. And so every one of these battles could change literally on a dime. And when you look back, and people like to play the what if thing, okay, fine, but these are like real deals.
Yeah.
David Mercury Gregg does not go into Brinkerhoff and does not force Johnson to send that brigade over. Then you're having 6,500 guys. They're going to run probably right through, no matter what the hell the great David Ireland does. He's going to get run over. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
And so it's these little things. Little things.
Yeah, Chickamauga especially is one of those things that's like, well, if Minty and Wilder hadn't been there, and Wittenberg argues it in his book, Holding the Line at the River of Death, which is a really good recounting of what Minty and Wilder do on the 18th. It does say very strongly, and I agree with this, Chickamauga is a 3-day battle. It begins on September the 18th, not the 19th. It's 3 days, not 2. I believe that ever since I visited there, and I'm like, well, holy shit, like to say it's just 2 is kind of discounting what Minty and Wilder do, which is basically save Rosecrans' ass and allow him to get back. And Minty and Wilder go into September 18th knowing full well they're not going to be able to stop the inevitable battle that is going to happen the next day, but they can at least slow Bragg down and allow Rosecrans to get the army together so that they can protect those roads into Chattanooga, that they can have a line of escape back into Chattanooga and they can still hold the city. But I mean, how many times does that happen? And also Michael brought up a point of how many times does, the generals who are sitting at the back or they're not at the front, like in this case, Rosecrans and Crittenden, how many times does that happen in the Civil War where they don't believe the guys that are coming forward and saying this is happening? It happens with Hooker at Chancellorsville, and it happens, especially the one I thought of the most was Shiloh with Appler, that Sherman just ignoring, basically saying like, there's no rebels here. It's like, well, what evidence do you have? And Crittenden is, basically like, I'm going to believe what Washington is sending me over what the guy who has been out there for days has heard them, possibly seen them, and keeps saying it's Longstreet. I'm not going to believe him for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's exactly, and that's how it changes. And so now it slows everything down. So now there's more of an effort to get across that bridge. And when you look at everything that happens on the 20th, when you talk about the Brotherton, house and the Poe house and everything on the Lafayette Road, the Snodgrass Hill, at Horseshoe Ridge and all that stuff, that doesn't happen because they're going to roll right past them.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is too, is like you mentioned this earlier that, you and I've talked before about just how big of a battle Chickamauga is, and just how it's like, it's all these little battles in one. And it's like, you said it best in our episode that we recorded like 3 years ago now, that it's like a bar fight.
Yeah.
And that starts on the 19th. It's like this bar fight that each room is different. And if you've been to Chickamauga, you know what we mean. You have an area of forest, you have a meadow, you have some rolling hills, undulations, what have you. The terrain is very different than rolling hills. The terrain is very different from Gettysburg. And it's it looks, I think, a lot how it would have looked 160 years ago.
I mean, they're virtually similar sized battlefields. The battlefield at Gettysburg is 6,000 acres. Chattanooga is 5,500 acres. It's about the same. Obviously it's much less developed at Chickamauga. There's not. Yeah. It's more like Antietam. If you're an Eastern person, but yeah, I mean that's the thing is, but this, as far as total number of soldiers of this thing, I mean, this is a monstrous battle, a monster. And there's a lot of popular names. I mean, we've talked a lot about the guys in the episode, like Shot Pouch Walker and some of those fun dudes like that. John C. Breckinridge is this one, Mary. He's here, right? and so a lot of these guys are obviously John Bell Hood is here,
Nathan
James
Bedford
Longstreet is
Forrest.
here, Hiram Granberry's here,
Yeah.
Nathan Bedford Forrest. And speaking of Nathan, I'm glad you brought him up, Mary, because we got to talk about Nathan Bedford Forrest real quick. He was put in a bad spot here, and I'm not gonna sit here and make excuses for him, but this is a guy who's used to raiding and attacking, like a Mosby, and he gets put in the role of guarding flanks and reconning.
That's stuff that he's like, okay.
I mean, it's like telling your cat to do algebra or something. That's not how he's wired. So as they're going forward with Bushrod Johnson, he's got a chance to push Minty's guys back, but instead he makes the decision to fall back to the infantry and move up with them because he's got to guard their flanks. And that he made if you're a Forrest fan, September 18th is not his best day. This is his version of Stonewall. I mean, Stonewall in the 7 days or Kernstown. This is just, but the Forrest people aren't going to tell you this. I'm not going to go over this. But
Forrest is one of those ones that you can't. He's like Jackson in that way, and I'm trying to think of who in the Union that would be like as well, just to have a comparison in the Union. Like, you bring up Forrest, and it's like he does nothing wrong, and it's like, well, go check out September 18th because it's not a good look.
I mean, he didn't completely peed on his leg here either, but he made decisions that, again, 160 years later, we can look back on, we can point, laugh, and criticize. Yeah. But at the time, when they actually get to the bridge and they have a chance to drive them, he ends up pulling a lot of troops back, Tennessee guys to go south to go back, try to catch Union guys, and it ends up leaving so many less men available to fight. And these are the decisions that was made by some of these guys. But again, the whole thing goes back to wouldn't have made any difference in one way or the other if it wasn't for John T. Wilder and Robert Minty, because what they did was literally, like we said, Lew Wallace did it in Monocacy. Yeah. They threw a speed bump up and they fought, and they allowed the rest of the army to kind of come back, and they knew they weren't going to win, but you hope to contain them. And just try to keep the game close, and hopefully the army gets there from Rosecrans, who was anxiously trying to pull everybody together at this point.
Yeah, I can't imagine how he felt. He's got this, like you said, he got cocky, got arrogant, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like what am I going to do? AQ's wondering how many men fought at Chickamauga.
Total was 125,000 men. 65 Confederates, 60,000 Union. Yeah, so that's you're talking about one of the big boys, and people merged the Battle of Chickamauga with Chattanooga. You know why, Mary? Because it's the battlefield, Chickamauga-Chattanooga battlefield.
Yeah,
right.
But they're like 3 months. They're like 2 months apart.
The Chattanooga was fought in the greatest day in American history, November 25th. Remember that date?
I actually have to agree with you about that.
Okay, it's this guy's birthday.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say 125,000 guys. We're not talking about. We're not talking a bunch of slapdicks from behind we're talking about like hardcore Army of Northern Virginia, Army of the Cumberland. These are battle-tested, tough dudes who, and this is, you're talking a couple of years into the war now. So we're not talking about people running around. These are guys who aren't going to retreat and run with this. And when Nathan Bedford Forrest is a footnote in this battle, it shows you how many people were here with this. And, it's definitely Bragg's greatest win, and somehow because of the way the politics works out, Longstreet and Hood get all the credit for it, but it's not really fair.
Yeah, I think it's more Hood than Longstreet. Hood is the one to go through on September 20th through the breakthrough. Longstreet probably ordered him or whatever. But then the interesting thing about Hood is he shows up on September 18th. His arm is still in a sling, and he's like, "Let's go," and he's still not 100%.
Well, he shows up with his arm in a sling, kind of like your boy Howard at Second Manassas, by the way, except he actually participates in this way. He doesn't stay in the back and eat popcorn. He rides, he makes it to one of the bridges, and all the Texans, Jerome Robertson, he's there, Gettysburg, he's fighting with them. They're all clapping and teary-eyed because Hood's here, and he tells them, he says, we have a battle to fight. Yeah, we have a battle to fight. He gives them some sort of Belichick type comment. But that's what it is, though. And he goes on to get it, lose a leg here in a couple of,
on the 20th,
a couple of days later.
A big day for deaths in this battle. You have, well, not deaths, but just woundings. Like you have Hood with the leg, which is going to afflict him for the rest of his life. probably factors into the decisions he makes as a commander of Army of Tennessee when he's asked to do that. And was that August of 1860?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And then, so he's going to be back in Richmond again, but then he comes back again once he's recovered from the leg wound. You have William Haynes Lytle on the Union side getting taken out. And he is one of the, so William Haynes Lytle, we did a episode about him. And the reason we did that is he's like a known Freemason in Civil War history, but he's also like a, think of a big celebrity today. That is what William Haynes Lytle going and fighting in the Civil War was like. It would be like if Leonardo DiCaprio went to fight in a war. William Haynes Lytle was known on both sides. He was a poet, very
well. He'd only fight if the nurses were under 25 years old. So forget DiCaprio. Dorothea Dix, he's too old for him. So you have to think of a different example because Leo's not going to apply. He ain't interested.
Appalachian Allegory says, "But at a bad time, have you injured his leg at Tunnel Hill?"
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, this and this like the Gettysburgs or the Antietam's. There's so many little nuances to this. You've got a whole bunch of cool little things, and so even the Confederates, they win this battle. They take almost 19,000 casualties here.
Yeah,
I mean, they get their nose bloodied, and this wasn't a slam dunk Chancellorsville type victory, Fredericksburg victory, Gettysburg type victory. This was one that was like won on decision. Because those troops that Hood did have, when he broke that gap there, that's why they get credit for it. But they came in fresh, piss and vinegar came right at them, and was able to draw them back. And Thomas is going to put that defense at Snodgrass Hill. He's going to get his nickname, the Rock of Chickamauga, from it. Yeah. And then Rosecrans is going to fall back, and then he's going to lose his job not long after that.
Just before the battles for Chattanooga. And Elsie brings up, like, people give Bragg crap for not following up after Chickamauga to destroy Rosecrans, but I don't think they could have. Similar post Gettysburg argument with Meade not destroying Lee.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is they fought long enough to allow the Union to fall back on Chattanooga. And this is the thing I always wondered about this, and this is not anybody's opinion but mine. What choice would they have? They were on high ground. They're not going to bomb their own city. They're not going to shell Chattanooga. They're not going to. So what do? They try to strangle them like a snake, like a snake. But what they want to do.
You mentioned that.
I know, but they want to kind of like a python. They want to dry them out. Where unlike Vicksburg, they're not going to be firing shell to shell to shell, but they're going to try to keep the supplies out. So they basically starve the army, and that's going to take a long time. And that's why with everything that went down with that Cracker Line opening that happens, why that is like sticking a needle in the balloon, right?
Yeah.
Is that, and that screwed the whole thing up. But Bragg's plan up to that point, Chickamauga into the beginning part of Chattanooga, was pretty good. Because I'm not sure what choices he had. If he shelled that city, what the hell? That was probably the second biggest supply hub after Atlanta in that area.
Well, he's stuck. But the other thing too is Army of Tennessee goes into a state where they're not that much better off than the Union Army.
Yeah.
Like Cleburne's guys at one point are on half rations. He's up on Missionary Ridge, and the conditions are not very good at all. And that's the thing is, they're bad for the Union. They're getting worse as each day goes by, and they have to Grant, I think, comments about when he arrives on the condition that the horses are in, that they're starving. But the Confederates are going through the same thing as well, where they're not, they're on half rations. And then there was instance where men would steal chickens from local farms, and then Bragg would find out and get pissed off and have an execution. It's really not good on either side for the armies in this situation. Bragg's in a bad position, so is Rosecrans. Well, Rosecrans, I think, might be in a little bit of a better position because he's at least in the city that the Union needs.
But you think about it, you're Rosecrans. Okay, good. Turn back the clock here. He's in charge. He's being told by Washington to fight, be aggressive, go. Stones River, you go get him. And he does sit on his ass the entire winter in Murfreesboro and doesn't do much. He gets him through Tullahoma, but now he still have that mindset to go. And he's having people like Thomas tell him to slow down. he's getting all kinds of different mixed signals, and he I mean, think about it. You have an opponent you've beaten easily. You got a chance to beat him again. Rosecrans was looking at higher aspirations politically, and he realized, shit, if I can destroy this whole army of Tennessee here, I'm going to be a hero. Forget this Grant guy. This is going to be me. And it turned to the measuring contest of the U.S. Grants once they get to Chattanooga. But this is all the intrigue that goes on behind the scenes of some of this stuff.
There's a lot of intrigue that happens, you know, in the lead up to the Battle of Chickamauga, even in the Tullahoma campaign. I mean, I do side a little bit with Rosecrans on why he's not moving, because he's like asking Washington for certain things, and Halleck is giving him shockingly a hard time. So I kind of, you know, I do sympathize with him in that regard, that maybe he feels my army is not to the point where I need it to be, where I feel safe.
Well, it was just like
battle.
Well, it's just like McClellan after Antietam. He wanted supplies. He's like, I'll go get this guy. I'm going to go get him. But I mean, I want supplies. And then Bragg is the same thing. They all want supplies. But once
Bragg thought the supplies were going to the Army of Northern Virginia.
Yeah. Well, then again, because he's got his thing with Lee, and they're, you know, mommy likes Lee best, and there's so much that goes into this, but with how these guys all got along, with like, how come this guy gets this and I get nothing? I get jack shit out here. You know, I can't even sit down in a saddle. You know, that's the problems that Bragg had.
And poor Bragg had a lot of health issues.
He did have a lot of health issues, but again, you're seeing that different armies are getting different things, and that's a big part of it. And they both, Rosecrans, they both had aspirations of being the man, both Bragg and Rosecrans, especially Rosecrans.
Oh yeah, Rosecrans definitely wanted to be the number one, but the other
because he thought he earned it. I mean, you have a good win, you have a good victory, December 31st, 62 at Stones, and you're going to take your winter quarters. Okay, fine. And then when you go to Tullahoma, you get them out of Chattanooga with almost virtually without undefended, and you got them on the run, and you know they're beaten. I mean, of course you're going to be aggressive. He wasn't stupid. He knew he needed supplies.
Yeah, he had good guys though too. I mean, you look at, like, you know, Tullahoma campaign is what makes the Lightning Brigade what they are. You know, you've got guys like Minty and Wilder. You've got the guys to do it.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about this, I don't know, a couple of days ago, I think it was. I mean, I like Minty better than Wilder.
Yeah,
I just do. I just think this is a guy who, you know, he was the Saber Brigade. You know, they used the sabers and instead of the guns, and they were defeating armies without even one shot because they had the sabers and they had that reputation, and the Union loved them. I mean, especially Rosecrans.
Yeah.
I mean he loved himself some Minty, big time. You know, and Wilder had, you know, he was paying for his own guns. He's getting the Spencers, and you see a lot of these Confederates, you know, seeing these, you know, St. John R. Liddell is, you know, his men are basically like, this is ridiculous. These guys are, you know, that's what the quote, you know, load on Sunday and shoot all week comes from, was they're defending this bridge, and you have 7 times you can shoot faster. It's almost like having 7 times as many men, if you think about it.
Yep. In a way, Bragg got out technologied at that point in the battle.
That's the whole thing. It's kind of like the microcosm of the whole war. A lot of people think that the only reason the North won was because of technology, but in that battle, you probably make a true case for it, because you're firing with these, you know, with some of these guns, that some of these muskets, these breech loading type things, going against some of the real up and coming guns. That you know, replace the Henry rifle with this new Spencer, and especially when you're not expecting it.
No, like, and some of those guys probably had never seen it. And there is a really great YouTube video with the demonstration. It's from the 150th anniversary of Chickamauga, and they're out by the Wilder Tower, which I think we went up in the Wilder Tower, didn't we?
Yeah,
that's right, we did. And they're out there demonstrating it. It's some guys portraying Wilder and his guys, and the Spencer. I'd never seen one demonstrate before. That, like, I was like, holy shit, that is crazy. You literally just load it and you go.
Yeah, it is. And then unlike some of the other ones, the carbines, they were more accurate. The carbines, you could shoot faster, but you have a closer range. And those are the ones that Buford had at Gettysburg was the carbines, and the ones that Minty had carbines. But these Spencers, and then you end up with like the 5th and 6th Michigan, Custer's guys had them. They're able to hold off Witcher's guys in East Cavalry Field at Gettysburg with these same guns.
Oh, they did have Spencer. So yeah, because see, one time I remember when I started studying Gettysburg, I remember hearing something about Spencer's, and then I started connecting with Buford, and I was like, wait a second, Buford's guys didn't have Spencer's on that first day.
No, but two of Custer's regiments did, and then that was, you know, and when you study East Cavalry Field, it's a fascinating study. For one, no one studies it for some reason, it just doesn't. But when you look at how Brinkerhoff turns into Jeb Stuart and bringing up his guys, and you have a lot of guys like Witcher who no one's really heard of. Guys like Jenkins, everyone's heard of Wade Hampton. No one's really heard of Chambliss, but some of these Confederate guys going up against some of these Union guys, and as much as Pleasanton takes a lot of credit for Gettysburg, which he
has the most punchable face in the Civil War.
Pleasanton is probably, for pound, he might be the most incompetent guy in the entire Union Army.
I'm sorry,
but I mean, well, you're realizing, okay, I've got a bunch of Confederates here down by Low Dutch Road, Hanover Road, that area, but I'm going to send most of my troops over across Wolf Hill and to defend there. Like Jeb Stuart's going to make it up. They're going to make it up the hill in those horses until finally, Custer's like in Montgomery. McMurtry, Gregg are like, well, no, we'll let you stay here, but then. It's fascinating because he gets orders to send Custer over to the other flank, and he basically says, "Can you, to Montgomery Gregg, McMurtry Gregg, can you order me to stay here? Because I don't want to freaking go." He's like, "Yeah, you can stay here." And they have those Spencers, and in the Confederates, they're dismounted because they're fighting. A lot of them are fighting with the muskets. They can't load on top of the horse, so they've got to get off and go. So the first part of East Cavalry is dismounted cavalry out by the Runnel Farm. So it's fascinating how the different guns and different cavalry works and things like that. And you can, and what's a big, since we're talking around the same time that July 63, right around Tullahoma at Gettysburg, is people always talk about, was Gettysburg the turning point of them? No, probably not. But it might have been for the cavalry, for the U.S. versus the Confederate.
Yeah,
starting with Brandy Station, up to that point, it was men versus boys, right? And then during the Gettysburg campaign, that's when it really changes with the horsies, Mary. And the horsies. And you see it with Buford on day one, and you really see it with McMurtry Gregg on day three. And so people focus a lot on Buford. I get all that. It's the movie, Sam Elliott, you know what's going to happen here in the morning.
I will say this though, like what Minty does, because if we're going to compare cavalry to cavalry, what Minty does on the first day of Chickamauga, I think is a little bit, I don't know, it kind of is a little bit above what Buford does. Not discounting Buford guys, not discounting Gettysburg. I love Gettysburg, but I think what Minty does, if we're comparing cavalry.
Yeah, but at least we know why Minty was there, right?
Oh, we do. We don't know why Buford was there. Not even Buford could answer that question for you.
I ran into Buford at the mine. I asked him that question. He didn't even know.
He's like,
he couldn't answer me. He was flabbergasted. That's that for a word. But yeah, but there are a lot of similarities to that. And what obviously what Buford did at Gettysburg, once he did engage, once that finally started out there by Knoxville, it definitely led obviously the battle, but it slowed Heath's guys down big time. Marcellus Jones is going to fire that first shot. That one shot delayed the Confederates probably an hour and a half or so. And just like this battle we were talking about, it allowed the First Corps and the 11th Corps and the Third Corps, all those guys to slowly move their way up and get up there and defend the area. So it's kind of a similar battle, the early part of Chickamauga, with two different commanders of cavalry. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels. There really are.
No, and I mean, like Wittenberg does talk about that, because Wittenberg's written stuff about cavalry at Gettysburg. And he does say like Minty is having a tougher time than what Buford had, and he's having to worry.
Oh, that's not even close. I mean, nothing against Buford, but
no.
For one, Buford had 2,400 guys right around there, 2,500, give or take. Wilder had 973 guys.
Yeah, and he
And a
sent
lot,
and
and a lot of
Minty
his,
did
yeah,
too.
a lot of, well, he had less than that, but a lot of Wilder's guys got sent to Forest Minty. So you
Yeah.
probably have a combined maybe 3,000. Give I don't know the exact numbers how many Minty had, but it's instead of fighting ridge to ridges, you're sending, and they all send vedettes out. Buford sent vedettes out too, but you're able to kind of see these armies coming from a wide different directions.
Mhm.
If Buford had to fight, and his line consisted of going to where the peace line is, you had Yule coming now all the same against them all at once. That'd be more, apples to apples. But
Yeah.
and this is not an indictment of Buford. I'm just saying the circumstances are what they are. But what Minty, Wilder did, that should be top A-list stuff when you're talking U.S. cavalry in the Civil War. And it just should not be Buford. But again, it's the Gettysburg thing, and I get that.
Yeah.
But what they did, and I think the other big part of it too, is the Confederates ultimately did win this battle.
Yep.
So it wasn't like the Union saved the day because of that. They still got beat up pretty good. It was more like Antietam than Gettysburg because again, the casualties numbers are very close. But I think that's a big part of it too. Is Western theater also is the redheaded stepchild.
It's like,
War.
but
So
I mean, you said like, the cavalry, the U.S. cavalry comes to its own at Gettysburg. I would, everybody forgets Grierson.
Well, right, but that was a little different, though. I mean, Grierson's raid, that was a big deal, and you're talking about, in my opinion, that U.S. Grant Bruinsburg landing and his raid into Vicksburg is probably the greatest U.S. campaign of all time. Although Tullahoma is close, though. I'm not gonna lie, Tullahoma's right up there with it, right?
That's what LC said. LC said Tullahoma was probably the best strategic win of the war, given lack of losses in overall gains.
Yeah. I mean, I think I put Grant ahead of that, but it's just as important. But what Grierson did was more of just kind of, it's a little bit different because he was more on an offensive. He had to make the big loop around. He's got to go through Houston, Mississippi. He's got to go through all the way down through there, and he's got to be covert. And he gets lucky on certain things. But they're different. But he didn't have to fight. Although I know Forrest was out there and those guys are out there, but he didn't have to deal with, thousands upon thousands of infantry soldiers, guys like, Bushrod coming, and then later on getting Shot Pouch Walker coming, St. John Liddell. Shot Pouch?
I kept wanting to call, I'm going to call him Shut Pouch. Like, I'm gonna screw this up.
Well, we said this in the episode, and the reality is there is no better nickname factory than the Civil War. There are so many great nicknames that come up. No, there are, though. I mean, forget the obvious ones like Stonewall, but I mean, Grumble Jones is a great nickname. Great nickname. Shot Pouch Walker is a great nickname. There's a whole bunch of fun ones with this. Even the ones that didn't stick, like Allegheny Johnson, they called him Old Clubby, another great nickname. There's so many fun ones you can read about these. What was the one? God, I'm blanking. There was one. The one that Jefferson C. Davis, the one he shot.
Oh, Bull.
Bull
Nelson.
No, it wasn't Bull Nelson. The one they called Chucklehead was his nickname.
McCook, wasn't it?
It was McCook. It was good job by you. It was McCook. His nickname was Chucklehead.
But that's not who Jeff C. Davis shot.
No.
Jeff C. Davis shot Bull Nelson.
No, I was confusing with Nelson when you said McCook. But
Jeff C. Davis got promoted. Yeah. I don't understand that. I don't like Jeff C. Davis.
No, but my overall point is that these guys are creative with their nicknames. They really are.
Yeah, but then there's the ones that the parents gave them.
Well, there's all that, but
it's rats.
No, there's some good ones with that though, but it's fun to look at it because when you study this up close enough, you really start to see the similarities with a lot of these battles. You really see it, and you can see mistakes being made in similar battles and mistakes not being made in similar battles. But Chickamauga is really cool though, and I would hopefully it gets more attention. I'm not seeing a lot of. I'm not sure if
I
American
don't see, I
Battlefield
know
Trust is
they've,
down
I
there this
know Jim
time.
Ogden's been out there. Dave Powell was at Chickamauga. He's
You
been
know what's cool
posting
about
stuff
Jim
about
Ogden,
it.
by the way, is he dresses like it's 1962.
I
You
know he
notice
does.
that?
Yep.
I love that. He has the tie jacket buttoned up. He
Yep.
looks like he's a throwback. Ogden, he's probably guys like Lee White are big out there too. They know their stuff.
Ogden is like, he's such a nice guy too. Like
Yeah.
I've told you this before. I've talked about it on here. Like I was watching him do a Facebook Live. I was watching it on the battlefield as he was doing it, and it was about William Haynes Lytle. And then afterwards, like I was standing over at where Lytle was wounded, or where he died apparently, and Jim Ogden came over to me and he talked to me for a while about Lytle, and it was like we had a great conversation about him. And he's just this, like, he'll stop and talk to you about anything Chickamauga. He knows his shit. Really good guy. The other one too that knows stuff about Chickamauga is Dave Powell.
Yeah.
You used his books for this for the Minty Wilder episode. I used Wittenberg's book for it. But yeah, Dave Powell, and we get asked all the time, what should I read about Chickamauga? And it's like Dave Powell's trilogy, Wittenberg's book.
I think Powell's trilogy is the end all be all for Chickamauga. But I also think that Jim Ogden, I don't think anybody knows more than anything about Chickamauga on the planet than Jim Ogden.
Oh God, no! You watch his stuff, and our roundtable that we're part of, the Chickamauga roundtable. He's been on as a speaker before, and he knows his stuff. And you're right, he does dress like it's the 1960s. It's really awesome.
No, he does. He looks at the picture of John F. Kennedy standing there at Burnside Bridge, a ranger next to him. That's how Ogden. If you go on any of the YouTube videos for the Chickamauga Chattanooga and you see him, you'll know him because I love it. I'm not making fun of the dude. I think it's great. I wish they all did that.
He's in his glory right now. It's the 160th of Chickamauga. And yeah, I would love to see it get the same attention that Gettysburg gets. Appalachian Allegory said, I have several bones to pick with Ken Burns over the Western Theater, and said that ABT seems to do significant events in the East, and I'd love to see a Twilight tour of Shiloh. I know ABT has been in the Western Theater, like they did some stuff a few years ago at Chickamauga, but they don't appear to be out there right now.
I haven't admittedly been paying attention to much of what Battlefield Trust and Gary and those guys are doing. Are they out there if the 160th? They're not. I mean, these guys. I mean, this other stuff they do besides the things. But I know they've been out there. I know that they've done a lot of good work at Chickamauga, Chattanooga. But they're based out of Washington D.C. too. Yeah. So it
goes back to the same as in the Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, it just is. I mean, these guys, if you're gonna, if you're gonna have an anniversary battle, Gettysburg 160, it's, I got you, I do. But they do a lot of good work. I mean, anybody who studies this and promotes any of this stuff, is really doing God's work here.
They are. Yeah, ABT has done some. I know on their YouTube channel they do have some great videos about Chickamauga as well, and the battles for Chattanooga, because they were out there. There's a really good one with Gary Edelman standing where he was trying to figure out where Grant stood in that famous picture after the battle above the clouds. And
the one he's peeing
with the tree. He's peeing.
Yeah, that's how it looks to me. Looks like he's peeing with a cigar in his mouth. If you look close enough,
they wouldn't have taken a picture of that.
I don't know. Maybe.
Anyway, Gary Edelman was trying to find that, and that's a really great video.
I'm just saying he drank a lot. You know what happens? You drink a lot, Mary. I'm just saying.
Like the seal.
To me, it looks like that picture of him. It looks like he's peeing, and the one that looks like that Robert E. Lee's on the cell phone. Those pictures are some of my favorite ones because it's just hilarious. Although in my opinion, the all-time greatest Grant picture, without a doubt, is the one at Massaponax in Virginia. That's my favorite Grant picture.
My favorite. What is that? The one where he's leaning against the tree?
Well, he's just the one he's just sitting there on the bench with the newspaper, and they're all just hanging around shooting the shit around him.
I like the one where he's leaning against the tree.
Well, yeah. Well, we went to Massaponax last year. You probably forgot. You probably think you killed a few brain cells the night before. You probably forgot all about it. But we went there. We went to Massaponax.
I know we did.
Yeah, but we went to near the other great picture is the one with old Barlow there and Winnie Boy at Cold Harbor. try to recreate that picture, but there was no one to take a picture of us.
I
In the
know.
middle of nowhere with the trios.
We
Hey,
tried.
do your best to the best you can. Best you can.
There's
Get
some
to-
really
but-
awesome Civil War pictures. There's not as much though. I mean, again, this goes back to there's more of the Eastern theater than the Western theater. That's for sure.
Mhm.
Like there's not, because I don't think there was the photographers out there.
No.
Okay, yeah, the picture I'm thinking of Grant is Cold Harbor, where he's
Yeah.
leaning against the tree.
Yeah.
Frank said Bull Nelson and Clawhammer Witcher are two of the best names.
Yeah.
Clawhammer.
Yeah, that's some good one. I mean, it's great names, no question about it.
Yeah. But yeah, there's still definitely this whole thing with, and we've talked about this many times before, there's still definitely more of the Eastern theater that gets studied and talked about as opposed to the Western theater. You definitely see it with anniversaries and all that. And I mean, I want to see Chickamauga get some love. I want to see the battles for Chattanooga get love too, because those are cool battles that I mean, Battle of Ringgold Gap, where David Ireland is there from Gettysburg.
Yeah, the problem with Chattanooga is, I mean, it's tough to visualize. It's tough to do a live set of videos when you're scared to death to get out of your freaking car. That's part of the problem.
No, I do not recommend. No, but I'm saying like I hope social media they're that they're talking about it more.
I think they are. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is though, is I hate to say this, but everybody knows it. If you want the eyeballs to watch your stuff, you've got to talk about Gettysburg or Antietam or Sherman's March to the Sea or Appomattox. That's just, unfortunately, that's the things people hear. You're not going to hear too much about some of these guys. You're not going to hear about Matthew Ector had to deal with the Chickamauga getting his ass kicked over there, part of Shot Pouch's division. You're not going to hear about any of that stuff because people don't associate it because they don't know the names, they're not household names.
No.
But that's part of why people do this stuff, is to help promote this. Like I'm thinking of Barlow now because AQ's on here, but she does a great job talking about Barlow, and MJ does a great job with obviously Hancock.
But and Pauline Cushman.
And what's great about the picture with it's Cold Harbor with Barlow is they all gathered together because Barlow just got his Eagle badge, and so they're all celebrating him getting the Eagle Scout badge. He got made an Eagle Scout that day, so they took that picture. But that's what's neat though, is people can help bring, like you are with Howard. People bring these people to life because they want to study them. It's not that you don't like Grant or any of these guys. I remember you were a big Sherman person at one point.
Yeah, but then I kind of got over it. I mean, I still like Sherman. I love to study him. He's an interesting guy. But the more I studied them, the more I was like, oh gosh, there's just like there's a lot of things about Sherman I don't like. I don't like how I mean, anybody in history does this, but like, there's stuff you can definitely see he is very much about Sherman at certain points, which I get it, whatever, they do that. And I don't know. Howard was far more interesting. He didn't have a kind of that voice, and just how much people criticize him, how they think he kind of disappears after Gettysburg. And it's like, whoa. This guy was like out in the Western theater, fighting hard, learning from his mistakes, is on the march to the sea, is highly respected by Sherman and Grant and Abraham Lincoln as well. He tries his best on the Freedmen's Bureau, but Johnson's a real prick and he can't get the work done that he needs to. And he's kind of this, I think he's a very underrated general, and he's also the last general who commanded an army in the Civil War to pass away he passes away in 1909. Last general who commanded an army. I realized Chamberlain died after him in 1914, but Chamberlain never commanded an army.
Yeah.
No, Howard was the last one. And that really, when I learned that about him, like that really, I'm like, holy shit, that is like, imagine and at some point he had to come to the realization like, shit, I am the last one left that commanded one of these armies. And at some point he came to the realization, I'm the last one left that was, one of the commanders on the March to the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think when stuff like that happened to these guys, it probably really stuck with them when you're the last one.
Well, absolutely. I mean, these guys go to the reunions, and there was a last one for everything, for something.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it definitely stuck in his mind. I'm not sure he paraded around town saying, "Hey, I'm the last one," but I'm sure he thought about it.
Yeah.
Those reunions probably became a little more lonely.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
for
Like, I
sure.
don't think, I don't think they paraded it or Howard paraded it, but it was one of those things that probably, you're thinking about it like, oh shit, I'm now the last one here. Like, I think on the March to the Sea, I know Elsie's been learning a little bit. He's been studying a little bit more about Slocum. I find Slocum to be very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, Slocum was a steady Eddie. I mean, he has the reputation of being slow, and then slow to come Slocum and all that stuff. But he's a guy who, I mean, he earned his chops. He was highly respected. He was somebody who, Meade certainly respected, and he didn't really have bad moments. He just stayed below the radar. He didn't really have. He didn't strike me as a guy in reading anything about him that he was really a hardcore opportunist. Not to mention sneaky good hair for him.
He had amazing hair.
Yeah, really good hair. I mean, he doesn't have Carmichael hair. It's not get crazy or Granberry hair, but he was somebody. But for real though, he was somebody who was highly respected, and he was after he took over the field at Gettysburg there for a little while. He was the highest ranking guy for a bit.
Yep, and a lot of people don't realize that he's the, when he gets to the field, even if Hancock is still there, as soon as Slocum arrives, it's like he's in charge because he's the highest ranking officer. And, he goes out to the Western Theater, and I think does he not outrank Sherman?
It all depends on when they got their star, the dates. That's the problem with it, is you have to go back and see when they literally got it. And that was a big issue for a lot of people. We were talking before about some of these generals, how they get promoted. Your boy Howard, with some of those guys.
Well, I understand why Howard got upset with Sickles getting Corps command over him, because Sickles was a political general and Howard was West Point, and there was that kind of, I mean, I get it, that tension between them, but I understand why Howard was like, whoa, I need to get Corps command over the Sickles dude.
Well, I mean, politics, he's part of that Tammany Hall thing. I mean, that was a big deal. Like when we did the episode on the draft ride, see how powerful Tammany Hall was in New York City. I mean, so that's what, of course,
sometimes
he's going to.
It's about who has the, who is talking the most, who has that kind of voice. You look at someone like Buford, who was at a desk for a lot for the early part of the Civil War because he just didn't champion for himself. He didn't feel like he could. He didn't want to. And that's something that I'm reading Michael Shara's The Killer Angels again, because I'm actually doing a project about it in school. I'm looking at it from a publishing standpoint.
I hope you're giving Buster his due. And the great Arthur Fremantle, who is somebody who needs to be studied more.
I will.
I want your entire thing to be on Fremantle and Buster. I think I
can't. I have to do it from a publishing standpoint.
You got the British guy, the Irish guy, the natural conflict between the two. I mean, they should have had them in a fist fight at some point in that movie. Can you imagine that?
Well, I have to make recommendations for what I would and would not include if the book were published today. So I guess I could put that in.
Yeah, you probably need to throw in a few more Union guys and get a few Confederate guys off.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, like,
them,
we need to balance it out a little bit more. We need some more Union in here. Because when I was reading it last night and going through the cast of characters, it's like, holy shit. It's like,
well, definitely give the commanding Union general more than one line where he just complains about it being too dark.
So damn
can't see a goddamn thing from my goddamn face. That's how you are,
I'm talking about the book, though, not the movie.
I'm just giving you a hard time. But I mean, no,
twice.
That's the thing too, is give him a better death than that. Blow your arm.
Speaking of Buster, Gentili's on here, and he said there were battles fought west of Aldie.
Yeah, believe it or not, that was the only battle west of Loudoun County. I'm pretty sure was Chickamauga, Johnny Boy. So I think, although I'll tell you something, props to you for bringing. Maybe you think of Thomas Munford today. I didn't think I'd be thinking about Munford today in the Confederate side. That's pretty good. Judge Patrick, as we talk about him a lot, but we never mentioned Thomas Munford. Battle of Aldie, good one. Just in June there. So, but well, Pete, we did do a Battle of Aldie, didn't we? God, that was a long time ago. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a good one. But there's a lot of that. But what we need to do is do it on Glorieta Pass.
Yes, Trans-Mississippi. No, some people until I just said Howard. Let me guess, they need more Howard in the book. Yeah, I would say Howard could be a character. That would be.
Yeah, you just want one of those shower scenes like in Top Gun with Howard, with his rock hard abs and his. Hey, the Confederates are turning your left flank. Oh, really? That's what.
For some reason, I just thought of the shower scene in Dallas with Bobby. Oh, hey.
Oh God, it's all you friggin' need with that, But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more Howard needs to be in, but you could certainly. I'd like to see a little bit of maybe First Minnesota, a little Colville, maybe a little bit, something like that, maybe something like that. But that's my thing, little thing with that, maybe a little King Bergwin, a little action on the first day, North Carolina. I don't know. But
anyway, I have to read the book again, and I have to look at it from a publishing standpoint and look at it. If I was like a publishing house, what would I maybe ask the author to change about it? So we'll see how that goes.
No, I mean, that's, first of all, props to you for getting that, because usually a historical novel like that they're going to put the kibosh in that probably.
No, it's actually my instructor's one of her favorite books. So
no, but still, she's letting you do the project though. You just make you just Gone with the Wind or something.
No, she actually kibosh. She and I were talking about that, and she's like, "Don't do Gone with the Wind." I'm like, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to do Gone with the Wind." And plus the Margaret Mitchell's family, they don't have a lot of her papers available for the public, which is interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I were talking about that. They're like, what don't they want us to know about what she was writing about in that book? And I'm like, yeah, I could.
But obviously she was a big lost cause or all that stuff. What? I mean, it's a good book. We've talked about Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind many times. Yeah. But it's it's amazing that she lived up until, was it 1949? So
yeah. Yeah, she's killed by a drunk driver.
Yeah, that's not what I heard.
Oh, I was reading up on it. I know there's controversy around it. Humor and History. Did you guys ever do an episode on Sibley Out Far West?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of stuff we got to get to. There is. Really, there's only been a couple of times. Like this one we just did was really the second Chickamauga episode. Did we do two at Chickamaugas?
We did two at Chickamauga, and we did talk a little bit about Minty and Wilder in that first episode we did, but not to the extent that we did.
Yeah, so sometimes we'll drill down. We try to avoid Gettysburg for the most part.
Just because it's covered.
Well, yeah, it's covered certainly. It is a lot, obviously. Battle of Gettysburg podcast does a great job doing Gettysburg. So, and that's not why we don't do it, but it's just there's everyone talks about it. There's other things, there's other aspects to talk about. So many good people you've learned to come across by studying some of the smaller battles, and but when you get to study a lot of these, you get to learn about a lot of these big ones. And we talk about with Second Winchester leading into Gettysburg. Yeah. Speaking of Pleasanton, we think about Pleasanton, that punchable face guy. I mean, he's also, speaking of incompetence, he's the dude who said there are no Confederates in the valley that same day that Milroy was getting astroglided by Ewell. They said that there was no. So this is how it goes to show, and this is a cavalry guy. Is how incompetent these guys were. It's really
just the most punchable face in the Civil War.
A lot of these battles, the real talent was in that second level. You know what I mean? That the corps commander level, and Dave McMurtry Gregg is somebody who deserves a lot of credit. Speaking of cavalry, there's no question here. He really, really does, because he should have been in charge, not Pleasanton.
Oh, I completely agree. I don't know why Pleasanton was in charge. And I mean, poor Buford passes away in December of 1863 from typhoid. Humor and History said that my son and I love your series. He knows all about clowns in the Civil War. So I think your Rosewood Clown references.
Well, I'll tell you right now, you go look for that Henry Fuller monument in Gettysburg. You watch out for that Rosewood's Clown. That's a real thing.
Rosewood's Clown. Rosewood's Clown has made appearances in the Western Theater as well.
Oh God, what? You'd be surprised how often that pops up here from the old Rose. That's like the one thing people have learned from this stupid podcast is Dairy Queen, Rosewood's Clown. Those are the two things. that people are looking, will bring up from time to time, which is always kind of funny. But,
Appalachian Elwer says, I vote Edwin Stanton for punchability, and David Maxwell agrees.
Yeah, well, Stanton. The thing about Stanton is he's made to look like a total dick in almost everything he's ever portrayed. And I know that's the way he was. The Lincoln movie, he certainly was. The movie with Mary Surratt certainly was. Although that was Kevin Kline was a hard.
I liked him in that role.
Oh God, no. The guy who needs to play Stanton is John Goodman. That's who needs to play him.
Yeah, he would be really good.
Not climbing Fish Called Wanda guy playing Stanton. Come on, man. Seriously.
Gentili said Percy Wyndham has a punchable voice.
Yeah, he certainly does. There's a lot of guys who do, but I think what makes them even more punchable is when you see their personalities and how they are, right? But it is something to think about.
William Story Smith, he looks like Shaggy, like Scooby-Doo Shaggy.
Oh, he looks like Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That guy. He looks like he's
Shaggy.
It's like Perma High, that guy. Suey Smith is another incompetent guy, though. But this goes again. This talks about the disparity between the Union and the Confederate cavalry at this time, with a lot of these guys, a lot of these dudes, and how the worm really changed in that summer of 1863. It really, really did. Mm-hmm. And as good as Grierson and everything he did, it's really started at Brandy Station. When they realized they could kind of swing with Stuart.
Yeah.
In Gettysburg was a huge thing because if it wasn't for Mercury, I told before, if it wasn't for Mercury Gregg at Brinkerhoff Ridge there, now you're talking with old Clubby Allegheny. He's got the Stonewall Brigade with him now. Yeah. He's got 6,500 guys instead of 45, and Culp's Hill probably falls with 2,000 extra guys. And then there's a battle of Gettysburg, and it's going to be a loss. Yeah. Then there's no Pickett's charge, and then how do you finish the movie Gettysburg? Right?
Oh, my fault.
There's your book. You think you can do? You could say if the Stonewall Brigade doesn't get sent to Brinkerhoff to fight against McMurtry Gregg, there's no Culp's Hill Falls. There's no Pickett's charge. You can make that case.
Completely rewrite the Killer Angel.
You can make that case. Right. I'm just saying, if you want to go in, if you want to be a circus, be a three-ringer here. You have a real opportunity to go all in.
Some people are mentioning stuff, and David Maxwell says, "Don't forget Robert E. Lee."
What if Jimmy Walker, speaking of Stonewall Brigade, after he gets kicked out of school by VMI by Stonewall Jackson, and he challenges him to a duel?
Oh, that's
they actually do it, and he shoots Stonewall. Right. That's always a fun story when you think about it. I don't know what the hell Walker did. We'll talk about Stonewall guy later. We're not talking about shot pouch Walker here because we're mixing our Walkers. But there's all kinds of fun little stories that you see these guys. But that's something to think about.
Yeah. We've also learned about the Ghost with No Legs.
Oh, the one at the painting.
The Ghost with No Legs. That's you. Remember?
Oh, that fiasco. Yeah, that was a good one. There was a lot of stupid things like that, but I think as you study this, today is the anniversary of the second day. I was surprised at Battlefield Trust isn't there actually. As I think about it, this is some
good videos. I know they've got a video. I think someone mentioned that Dave Powell is on it. So ABT has done videos on the Battle of Chickamauga, and Chickamauga itself. They've got Jim Ogden out there doing stuff as well. So they are doing stuff for the anniversary.
Well. No, I'm sure Ogden and Lee White, I'm sure those guys are doing it, but I'm surprised like that Gary and Doug Dowds and Chris White and those guys aren't out there doing the 160th. And I know there's other stuff going on, but still, it just seems like this will be right up their alley. But I didn't think I don't think they've done one recently. Yeah,
they did. They went out there a few years ago, I think, and then they did some stuff for the Battles for Chattanooga. And I'll be really curious to see what they call it Chick Chat, what they do for the Battles for Chattanooga, because I find those just as interesting as the Battles for Chickamauga, the Battle of Chickamauga. The Battles for Chattanooga are like their 160th as well is coming up. Appalachian just said, I just saw Gary at Antietam for the 161.
Yeah, I know he was there for that.
They probably
But
have to
yeah.
like pick and choose where they're going. And I mean, again, they live in that area, so it might be harder for them to get out there and stuff. But
And
like,
it's obviously no slight on them by any stretch. There's other things. There's other things to do and what they do. But I thought I hadn't admittedly I've been kind of off the grid with the social media things since we got back from Florida, admittedly.
yeah.
But I assume they were doing something. I guess they haven't been. But that's no, yeah, that's what it is.
No,
You know?
Ogden's been doing stuff, and I know Dave Powell was at the visitor center today, signing books as well, because obviously they sell his books there. But yeah, the next big 160 coming up is going to be for Chattanooga. That's, those are some big battles there. Well, didn't you say, was it Browns Ferry is the most covert operation in the Civil War?
That people still talk about that as far as when you talk about a must-have, that Browns Ferry raid had at Chattanooga, but there's a shit ton with that. I mean, it's just like the Rambo movies where they're kind of sailing down on the raft and all the Vietnam soldiers and they're being quiet. That's kind of what Browns Ferry was. And in opening that cracker line was, and then Battle of Waxahachie, everything that kind of came after that, it really bailed them out because it was a matter of time. They would have got starved out of there. It's just there's only so much time.
Yeah,
that they would have. So what they that whole thing was kind of slowly sneak its way out and then open that line for supplies. Rosecrans deserves way more credit than that.
Oh yeah, that was his plan, right?
Well, and then it was his plan that Grant really helped facilitate and put in action. So a lot of the Grant people take credit for it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It was done, and it had to be done. And if you think about it, Bragg ends up within about a 6-month period getting pushed out of Chattanooga twice.
Yeah, that sucks.
I mean, just
Bragg.
Poor Braxy.
When you got and then there's the petition that and all the intrigue that happens between Chickamauga and Chattanooga. There's that petition that everybody signs apparently, and D.H. Hill, he gets ousted completely. He's gone bye-bye for a while. He reappears again at the end of the Civil War, but he signs the petition. Claiborne does, but for some reason Claiborne's untouchable. I think because he's so respected by his men. But Hardy, I think, really comes down on Claiborne for that. He's like, what the hell, dude? Why did you sign the petition? And Claiborne's like, everybody else was. Yeah.
But we mentioned a little while ago, Claiborne, he has his warts. I mean, Doug Hill and McLemore's Cove were not big moments for him.
No.
And it's not all on him because Hinman he's there too. And it's but there's a lot, there's no slam dunk heroes and goats with any of this stuff. But you can't pick and choose good and bad for everybody. You really want to.
Yeah.
Even the true greats, even the Grants, the Lees you pick with it.
Grant has bad days in the Civil War. Sherman certainly has bad days in the Civil War. I think one of Sherman's worst days in the Civil War that nobody talks about is Shiloh.
Yeah.
And I know he's, just it's early in the war and stuff, but that is, and the way they push that back on Lew Wallace, trying to find scapegoats in that battle, and they push it back on Lew Wallace, and that's really and Grant doesn't say shit to, in his memoirs, he doesn't really mention.
Well, Grant has his Holly Springs too.
Yep.
So they all do. They just, but that's what's neat though, is a lot of these guys will rebound from it and learn from it. Some guys didn't get a chance to. Beauregard never really got a chance to,
No, he didn't. And he's the bigger, the more I learn about him, he's the bigger what if in the Civil War. What if he'd been given a chance to do a little bit more? Now, Beauregard, and we call him Beauregard on here. He's very much by the book. He's
that's
if it's not in a textbook, I can't do it.
Well, by all accounts, he was very difficult to be around too. He spent a lot of time in New Orleans after the war, and he was part of either the city or a lot of them ended up Longstreet ended up in New Orleans and people like that. But he was a guy who was just a stickler. He was very big. He helped rooting out corruption in the town, in town government, and so he was somebody who just was very anal, very difficult to be around. But he stuck to his guns on Longstreet, who kind of flipped
Yeah.
Longstreet, you said before, he's another one. And I'm glad that book's coming out about him, because it tells a lot about his psychology about it.
Mhm.
And September of 1874, the Canal Street riots in New Orleans is something that really needs to be studied a lot more. And this is Longstreet leading the militia armed with black and white soldiers fighting former Confederates in the streets of New Orleans, wanted to overthrow the town, the New Orleans mayor, to basically put in a pro-Confederate type guy after the war,
Yeah.
a white supremacist type guy, and it doesn't happen. But this is the stuff that goes on afterwards.
Yeah,
with a
and
lot of these people.
that is so, like, the intrigue behind that is interesting too, because it's part of the history of the Civil War, because it's like how, it's just part of who they are, and part of the story of the Civil War is also Reconstruction. Frank mentioned, now this leads into our book club coming up. Frank mentions he's rereading Simmons' book on Claiborne, which is one of his favorites, one of our favorites too.
That's right. Oh, Craig
Author
Simmons will be
going to be on here a week from Thursday.
the 28th, right?
28th of September. Craig Simmons will be on here.
So if you haven't signed up yet,
Not
definitely
on
do
a
that.
live stream, but in like a Zoom meeting with all of us.
Yeah. So if you haven't been on the book clubs, it's more of a discussion with the author. You don't have to read the book to be on it, but he'll be on here. It won't be like this with a third person. It'll be everyone's on there, and you have a chance to ask questions and speak to him, and either type the questions or ask questions. Frank is very good at asking questions, man. I don't know if you know this.
He is.
But he'll be there. Colleen's another guy who will have a long list of questions. On page 35, what did you talk about? You're like, I don't know what that was on page 35 you talk about, but he'll talk specifically about the books, and it's a great opportunity to talk to some really, really cool people. Tim Smith, speaking of the Western Theater, having him on was a great one. That was so fun. We talk about Grierson. Speaking of Grierson, the real horse soldiers.
It was fun.
But he was the one who was like bummed when it was over.
I know. He was like, I could have kept going. And I'm like, well, you said you had to get up for a flight. Like, and we were like, we don't like to take up too much of their time, because they're like just giving their time to come hang out with us nerds. Right. And it's such a, like, I don't know, the book clubs are always a lot of fun. And I'm excited about the Simmons one. That'll be good one.
Yeah, he's excited about it. I know when we reached out to him, he was actually quite happy and surprised, because he's more of a naval guy. So he has a chance to talk about Patrick Clayburn. The Patrick Clayburn, the non-war Patrick Clayburn, is just as good as the war Patrick Clayburn. He's just a fascinating dude. He just is. And and so he try to be on that one, because that'll be a good one. We got a lot of good ones coming up. Tom Huntington will be on here pretty soon.
Tom Huntington is our last book club of 2023. He's going to be on in November. We have Lisa on with her poetry in October, and then Simmons is on a week from Thursday to talk about Pat Clayburn book.
We're gonna have some good ones. We're gonna have some good ones for next year. 2024 is coming. We got a couple we're trying to line up.
Yeah.
But I'm psyched for it, because it's great, because it gives you an excuse to read the books and to go through them all.
And even if you're on here and you have not read Simmons' Pat Clayburn biography, or you're halfway through it, you can still come onto the book club, because especially if you haven't read it, because if you come away from it, you're like, well, I want to read it now, then that's awesome. But it's a chance to see what the book is about. I always love asking about the research they do, like their sources that they use. I mean, I love that, like, the Simmons biography about Clayburn is one of those ones that is a very human story, and it's not like, I mean, you can't really get lost cause with Clayburn, like you can with some Confederate generals. Like, I read a Stonewall Jackson biography that was very much, I'm like, yeah, this is not, this is leaving
both Freemasons though, so
yeah.
So
that's the thing. And Simmons talks about Clayburn with the Freemasonry. He talks about him, like, basically the story of being born in Ireland, and then he eventually immigrates over to the US, settles in Cincinnati, and kind of starts to make a home for himself there. But then he gets asked to go do this thing in Arkansas, which is, I think, manage a pharmacy, and he's like, sure. And that's where he joins Freemasonry. He gets involved in politics, and he's got quite the, I don't know, he he's friends with Thomas Hinman, who's like a party boy.
Yeah, I mean, he has friends from the younger days who he sticks with, and he ends up being obviously all the way through him through Chickamauga.
Yeah.
And
He's very he's close with Granbury. He's close with Lucius Polk. He's very close with his, like, kind of that dream, like, I guess the dream team that comes out of, like, who's at Ringgold Gap, and then again you see them at Pickett's Mill. It's Claiborne, and his subordinates are Granbury and Lucius Polk, and who else is it? It's Granbury, Polk,
Daniel Govin. But Govin gets, for this battle, he's with Liddell in his division. All those Arkansas guys are with Saint John R. Liddell. So so they end up getting moved. But that he's close to all these guys because he's learning from all. He's a guy who you really learned on the fly. He had some military background with the English, but he really learns it all on the fly with this. And he was a pharmacist, like a lot of these guys. They have different jobs, and John Brown Gordon was an attorney, and he same deal. Yeah. He takes over the 6th Alabama, the Raccoon Roughs, and he's off and running. He just did everything right for the most part, for as far as battling goes. And so some guys just have the gene that just, you don't need to, read Mahan or Jomini or any of those things. Clausewitz, you have instincts and you just know.
Yeah, and Claiborne definitely had that. John Brown Gordon did. I mean, I think Claiborne had a little bit more military experience than what John Brown Gordon did, but
yeah.
Other than that, it's a very similar story of this kind of like, well, we're not educated at West Point, but they come out of it and they're two of the best that the Confederates had. Claiborne, I think, is one of the best in the Civil War. He's just
what's sad about Claiborne is that there's no post-war Claiborne.
No.
And so, like, you can read a lot about like what Gordon did afterwards, especially the politics, what he did. And like Longstreet, he was really big into reconciliation, but he wanted to reconcile so the South could have home rule again. They wanted this military districts gone. They wanted to have free elections again, and then that was his whole deal. And he became a senator, a governor. I mean, he was corrupt as friggin' hell. Gordon was.
Gordon is so corrupt. I mean, the KKK stuff is not great either. That's not a good look.
Oh, there's no question. Who? Speaking of Gordon in Chickamauga, who was at Chickamauga was Colquitt too. He fought there as well, but they ended up with Brown, Colquitt. I mean, they kind of ran Georgia kind of like almost like the mafia for a while after the war.
Is that the Bourbon Triumvirate?
The Bourbon Triumvirate, though, yeah, and so
why are they called the Bourbon Triumvirate?
Because that's the name that the media called them. I'm sure there was like
there was bourbon involved.
Like many things in our lives, there was drinking involved. I'm sure, Mary, there was something.
Gordon liked to drink.
Well, I mean, come out of his face is a problem with Gordon. It's kind of like with Claiborne. That's why he didn't drink, probably.
Didn't Claiborne not drink because of that one incident where he nearly killed his friend?
Yeah, he had anger issues. I think
the friend woke him up, and Claiborne like went off on him and nearly killed him. And then he was like, "I'm not going to drink anymore."
Oh no, there's no question. But no, but a lot of these guys have good histories, and as you watch them progress from even the regimental level, even as just soldiers. Pettigrew, speaking of Gettysburg, North Carolina, he was a guy who signed up as a private. They discovered he could speak like 38 languages, so they realized we gotta move this guy up because he's smarter than the average guy from backwater North Carolina. Yeah, and so he ended up rising pretty quickly, and he went from you look at how fast some of these guys rose. I mean, we mentioned earlier talking about East Cavalry Field at Gettysburg, Custer. Mm-hmm. 3 days before but July 1st, he's a captain. July 3rd, he's basically a general, or or a colonel. They jumped very, very quickly. As soon as Meade took over, he got to pick and choose who he wanted in high command. He picked Custer. Custer at that point was, he was kind of a wild man. He was young, last in his class at West Point, class of 1861, just like you at University of Toronto, dead last. Who was first in that class in 1861?
Oh, I know this.
Patty O'Rourke. It's got a restaurant named after him in Gettysburg. So the best and worst class of 1861 were in Gettysburg. So different ends of the battlefield. So, all right, when we get ready to jump off, it's 4:09. Time flies when you're talking about this stuff. That's for sure. So we will
see some of you there. I know David's going to be there. MJ just jumped off. Appalachian Allegory said that he's going to be there too.
Oh, very cool.
as well. So that's cool. We'll see a few of you there on Friday night. Like I said, we're doing trivia. We're emceeing, which I've never emceed anything before, but we'll see how this goes.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure I'll get stuck doing that, but it'll be fun. And maybe we'll try to do some kind of Facebook Live or something. We'll try to jump on and just
Yeah.
kind of maybe show the sights and sounds of that's what we should do. We should talk about, see if Mary Beth or somebody wants to jump on live and
Maybe
talk
we'll
about
jump
this.
on a bit before and show some behind the scenes stuff of getting things set up or whatever. Oh, Appalachian's a she. I'm so sorry.
Oh, well, I mean, you should not jump to conclusions, Mary. Exactly. Oh, that's pretty fun. That's good. That's good. That's awesome.
Has anyone read, Frank's, has anyone read Pettigrew's book on Spain? Wasn't it like a tourist book
Yeah, I didn't read that one.
where he was like, this is a nice beach?
He was a smart guy, though. University of North Carolina.
James Bond of the Confederacy is what I call him.
Yeah. He was definitely a very, very, very smart guy. It wasn't for Jeb Stuart, he'd probably still be alive today.
So sad.
Yeah, it is.
I love that he was played by James Bond, George Lazenby.
Yeah, James Bond, I mean, whatever, but it's fine.
He was good as James Bond.
Was he like in one movie?
Yeah, and he was really good. I like Lazenby.
I think I told you this recently. I've seen exactly one James Bond movie, just one.
My dad is like
the man with the golden gun.
Oh God, that is the worst one. My dad will tell you you need to start over with Sean Connery and like watch them all.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not currently accepting applications for a new
Man with the
right
Golden Gun is not canon James Bond, by the way. It was made by a different film.
Is that the one that Tattoo from Fantasy Island was in?
I think so, but it's not canon James Bond.
Because that's the one I saw. That's the one I saw.
Not canon James Bond.
All right. Well, let's just devolve into some solid conversation right now. So, all right. So Friday we're gonna be doing we'll do some kind of live thing. So hopefully people can make it. If you can't make it, we'll try to do something. So at least show you what it's like. So I think it's gonna be great if you haven't been in the museum before. There'll be in Gettysburg this weekend. There'll be some shenanigans afoot at the Circle K on the 717, Mary.
We will probably be at the mine after. For anybody in Gettysburg after the event in Harrisburg, if you're going back there, we'll probably be at the mine afterwards. The event ends at 9, so by the time we get back, it'll probably be about 11 o'clock. We'll be hanging out at the mine.
Yeah, pull MJ out of there probably like last time.
Probably.
Be fun.
I'll have to be your bodyguard like I was last time.
Oh, you were hanging with Jen and what's his name last time?
That was the second night.
You guys ditched me. You guys ditched me that night, actually, as a matter of fact.
That was the second night. The first night I was with MJ.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, David said he was good. He was a good Bond. He was in Her Majesty's Secret Service. Yes. George Lazenby was a very good James Bond.
Oh, I never saw it.
I will die on that hill.
Okay, fine. That's fine. All right, well, let's jump off. It's getting late. So we got that stuff coming. So and then I don't know. Did we play the next episode yet? I don't think we have.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Lee's Lee after kind of the aftermath of.
Oh, that's right. We're doing post Antietam after the war.
Yeah.
Although McClellan haters are going to hate that one.
We've sort of covered that. We did cover a little bit about McClellan, but it was more so the relationship between McClellan and Lincoln. But we're going to be talking about like Lee after Antietam and McClellan and just all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes with that. And then we will be doing I know for sure, end of October, we will be having it'll be our 4th annual Halloween extravaganza with Jen Price will be on.
Yeah, that's I know that's a month plus away, but we're telling Civil War ghost stories. That was the 3rd? It's the 4th one?
It's the 4th one. Yep.
So okay, I guess so. I'll take your word for it.
We're in our 4th year of the podcast.
Oh, I know. I don't remember. I remember a second one.
No, we did a second one. We recorded it. I was still in Canada, and the one last year was recorded when I moved here.
Yeah.
And then we have this one coming up. And then we'll probably this is a way down the road in November. We will probably be doing something for the 160th of the Battles for Chattanooga.
Oh,
I think of something to do for that too.
So this will let me know. I guess we'll connect on that one, figure that out. All right, well, let's jump off. So everybody have a great rest of the week. Today is Tuesday, right?
Tuesday, yeah.
Today is Tuesday. So tomorrow is Harrison Hump Day. So tomorrow's already Wednesday. So
And
we'll be
Howard
on
Hump Day.
Howard Hump Day. It's a big day around these parts. So, all right, guys, enjoy. If you are traveling down to Harrisburg this weekend, or be safe, be careful, drive safely, and
At
hopefully
the
we'll
event,
see.
come say hi to us.
If he comes, yeah, if you're there and you don't say hello, well, you're gonna be, shame on you. Well, you'll be in the dunce room, trouble, So definitely come by and say hello if you see us. We'll definitely and then try to win some books. Go to the trivia. We'll see how smart you are. Mary, you'll see how smart you are. We'll try to figure these out. But there's some good books to be had from Bjorn. We'll pass these out. So, but go. It supports a great cause. There'll be a lot of cool people there. Plus, it's going to be a lot of fun. When was the last time you saw cannon fired legally at nighttime? The Civil War cannon. You can actually enter a raffle, be one of the guys who pulls the lanyard, fires a cannon.
Wow.
How cool is that?
To do that.
There'll be cigars from Union Cigar there. I think Mason Dixon Distillery, I think, is going to be there too. And you're going to win a lot of cool prizes and maybe a lot of cool books. And you get to see the museum. And it's a night at the museum. So you get to see a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a great time for sure. Appalachian, we will see you there for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, guys. Well, enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you down in Harrisburg, or hopefully maybe even Gettysburg. Or if not, we will see you down the road. All right, Mary. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, see you guys later.